first day moving into student halls, I was greeted by a very friendly guy called Dominic. He was very camp and told me he was gay very early on in the conversation. I didn't really have a problem with that. He offered to help me unpack in my room and then go for a drink with me. Although I thought this was a little over-familiar for someone he just met, I was delighted that I had made a friend so quickly, and so I accepted his offer. He put a tremendous amount of effort into helping me put everything in the appropriate places in my room. We then went for a drink at the student bar. I made a point to tell him that I was straight, as I suspected he might have a bit of a crush on me, hence why he was being so nice. He didn't show any signs of dismay though, he just continued chatting friendly with me. I liked him a lot. He was very intelligent and quite interesting to talk to as well. I was very pleased that I had made such a promising new friend already. I was worried that I'd be a little bit lonely in the uni dorms by myself. He didn't live in the same building as me, just lived across. I was studying creative writing and he was studying for business, but we started to hang out a lot. Although I liked Dominic, I did start to find him a little bit overbearing. He would send me texts and message me on Facebook all the time and get very upset if I did not reply, even if it was only for about 5 minutes. He would always want to know what I was doing, and if I disappeared off Facebook for a while, he'd want to know where I'd been all day. One time I even sent him a text mentioning that I was on a train, and he texted this back. "Why are you on a train? Why am I not invited to wherever you're going?" I was on my way to a part-time job. I made quite a few other friends, and he would always show visible signs of displeasure whenever they were around, and whenever I talked about them. He would tell me he disliked them, and that I shouldn't trust any of them. He was very possessive, and I personally can't stand clingy friends. So I tried to distance myself from him a bit. The more I pulled away though, the tighter he grabbed on. I still hung out with him and still cared about him. He was my friend after all. But I was starting to worry about just where this friendship was going. I was fairly certain this guy had a crush on me, and very soon my suspicions were confirmed. I met this girl at a party I went to named Anna and asked her out on a date. She accepted. I was really thrilled and told Dominic all about it. The second I told him though, his face completely fell. "Why are you going on a date with her?" he asked me, sounding very worried. 'Cause I want to," I said. "But I'm going to be jealous. Please don't go, it'll really hurt me. You don't want to hurt me, right? I'm your best friend." I had never actually told him he was my best friend before. I found the way he was acting now both annoying and a little bit creepy. "I'm sorry, but I told you I was straight before, Dominic. We can still be friends, but I'm not going to stop dating just for you." He remained sulky and miserable the rest of the night. I told myself that he'd have to accept it and get over it soon. But when I was on the date with Anna, I kept getting these mysterious phone calls from unknown numbers. I answered the first one, but I couldn't hear anything on the other end. It was just as though someone was listening. I started to ignore the calls, but you would not believe how frequently they started coming in. They were coming non-stop, and I couldn't even tell the time because the notifications would not stop. I had to put my phone on airplane mode. After about an hour of my phone being so, I switched airplane mode off. The very second I did, the calls started coming in again. Although I was very unnerved by this, I really enjoyed my date with Anna, and we agreed to meet up again soon. When I got home from the date, Dominic was waiting right outside my dorm, phone in his hand. "How was your date? Did you like her?" he asked, sounding miserable. "Yeah, I do. Was that you who kept calling me?" "No, but anyway, I've been meaning to tell you, I hear Anna's a massive slut. She sleeps around with loads of guys. You should stay away. I'm sure she'll break your heart." Now, Anna had no mutual connections with Dominic, so I asked him how he could possibly know this. He just told me he'd done his research. I was very angered and told him it was none of his business and I'd find out for myself. He started crying, saying how he was just worried about me and stormed off. I think he was hoping I'd follow him, but of course I did not. I went to my room, angry he would even try to interfere with my life like this. I mean, I've had unrequited crushes on friends before, but if they don't feel the same, I never try and force it. Dominic only got worse though. When I got back to my student room, Dominic had sent me screenshots on Facebook of a conversation he'd allegedly had with Anna. The messages showed her boasting to him about how she was using me and how she was planning to break my heart. Obviously, this did not ring true, as 1, how would she even know who Dominic was and why would she message him? And 2, why would she tell a very public friend of mine so openly that her plans for me were to break my heart, when he would obviously show me? I demanded he show me the conversation from Anna on his computer physically with me there. He told me he had deleted the conversations because they were too upsetting for him to read. I knew right then and there that Dominic was deliberately trying to ruin my relationship with Anna through incredibly deceitful and despicable means. I told him that I wasn't interested in him, I never would be, and he'd better stop right now. He cried and told me I was being a terrible friend, that all he was doing was trying to look out for me, and he couldn't believe I was believing a stranger over him. I was seriously pissed off at the way he was selfishly trying to manipulate me now, so I blocked him on all social media. He started sending me constant texts immediately, calling me non-stop every day, telling me things like he was so depressed over me that he'd started taking heroin and was contemplating suicide, basically trying to guilt me with worry. He also would constantly send me things saying he knew Anna was cheating on me after me and her started dating properly, and that I had to come to my senses eventually. He was creeping me out so much that I went to stay with my parents for a bit, as I wasn't comfortable living in the same area as him. I blocked his number because the phone calls were so constant. People from my uni dorm were sending me angry messages because Dominic had told them a really twisted version of what was going on, making them think Anna was a dirty, STD-ridden whore who I had betrayed him for. It turned out he had been lying to everyone, telling them that me and him were in a romantic sexual relationship and that I had cheated on him with Anna, then left him for her. I furiously set everyone straight, told them I'd never been in a relationship with Dominic and everything he told them about Anna was bullshit. Most people believed me, although it took a while to convince everyone that Dominic was the liar. He was very good at being manipulative, and although his lies were ludicrous, he was good at making himself sound legit too. I decided to go back to the dorm after a while, as it was inconvenient for me to stay at my parents' while at uni. Their house was quite a distance away. I arrived back quite late, as I really didn't want to run into Dominic. I was so angry about him. I had a new girlfriend and my studies to think about, yet because of his weird obsession and harassment, he was now all I could think about instead. In a very twisted way, I think this is what he wanted, positively or negatively. He wanted me to be thinking about him. When I got back, I laid down in my bed, thinking about what to do, when suddenly, smash! A huge brick came flying through my window. I jumped up a mile in the air and rolled over the side of my bed, hiding for a moment. I thought it was burglars coming in or something, but nothing more happened. Once I got over the shock, I cautiously stepped over the broken glass and tried to look out the window when I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered it. It was Dominic, and you won't believe what he said. "Hey, I just saw Anna throw a brick through your window and run," he shouted. "I told you she was bad news, man. You should have listened to me. I told you." You would not believe the rage I felt. I was so angry I couldn't even speak for a moment, but I just exploded. I screamed at him that I knew it was him and I was calling the police right now. He tried to protest, but I hung up on him and immediately called them. When they arrived, Dominic was not in his room, but when it was opened up, a large stash of illegal drugs were found there. The manager of my student halls assured me that he'd be getting kicked out for this, and the police said they would be getting in touch with him as well. After this, I never saw Dominic again. I changed my phone number and never unblocked him on any social media. A couple of times I was tempted to out of sheer curiosity, but I decided it ultimately was not worth it. I think he dropped out of uni, but I'm not entirely sure what happened to him. My relationship with Anna didn't last. She was never quite clear on why she ended it, but I suspect Dominic's freakish behavior scared her off, even though it wasn't my fault. Oh well, I guess life goes on. A few years ago, I entered the University of Lausanne to start my medical studies. I had just arrived in the city and even in the country. I was very excited to start my year, to discover the university, to meet new people. Everything was going great, until the end of the third week. Friday night around 9 p.m., I leave the library, say goodbye to my friends, and start to go home. The pace of work was already very intense, so we had been working all day, and I was in quite a rush to get home. It was my favorite part of the day, because I'd put on my music, take the subway, then the train, and it gave me a chance to rest. Anyway, that night it was cold, so there was no one left outside. It took me about 7 minutes to walk from the library to the subway. I'm walking quietly with my music in my ears, when all of a sudden, I get this shiver that runs through my body from head to toe. I started to feel uncomfortable, as if there was someone watching me. At that point, I paused my music and decided not to turn around to check in case the person was trying to be really inconspicuous, and if I did notice them, they might pounce or something. I didn't want to run either though, because I wasn't sure if I could run faster, and I didn't know where to run to either. At this point, we passed a glass building, so I decided to look inside and pretend I was fixing my hair. I quickly glanced out of the corner of my eye, and my blood runs cold. There was definitely someone walking a few feet behind me, standing there in a hoodie. I tried to reassure myself. Surely he's just finished work. He's just heading home. He's cold and that's why he's wearing a hoodie. But I didn't see a backpack, and there were no houses for civilians around. I decided to send a message to my mother, saying, "Come and get me in front of this building, please. I really don't like what's going on here." It's important to know that the university is 30 minutes by car from my house. At this moment, I didn't find any other solution. I decided to take refuge in a building while waiting for my mother to come and get me. As I was about to go back, I opened the door, took off my headphones, and went down the stairs to find a hiding place. We entered by the 3rd floor. I thought I was out of trouble when I suddenly heard the door I came in through open. This time I was sure he was after me. But since I'm new here, I don't know this building, and I don't know where it leads either. I run downstairs at full speed. I hear behind me the footsteps of the guy running downstairs to match me. I run without looking back, being sure that he was running faster than me, and he would eventually catch up to me. I don't even know where I'm going at this point, but I pray to God that I don't fall into a dead end. Looking back, I even think that it was really like in The Shining with the labyrinth scene. I didn't know how far ahead of him I was, so I opened a window in the hallway to make it look like I was out that way, and opened a door a little further down. It opened up to this huge auditorium in the pitch dark. I went down the stairs and hid underneath a desk in the middle. I put my phone on silent. My mom had been texting me a lot, asking me what was going on, and saying she was on her way with my dad. I texted her, "I'm in this building. He's looking for me. Please come quickly." I hid under that desk thinking I was screwed. My hiding place absolutely sucked if any light were shined on it, and he was going to find me any second. I heard a thud and a huge scream. I don't think I've ever been so scared in my life as when I heard that scream. For 15 minutes, my mother was sending me messages telling me just to hang on. At the end of those long 15 minutes, waiting for him to find me, I finally got the message from my mom, where she said she was with the police. They were going to enter the building, and they needed to know where I am. I told them I was on the 2nd floor, because I had no idea what room I was in, or even which way I had gone. After 2 minutes, I hear the door of the auditorium open. It was the police that came to get me. Once they got out, they took my statement and said they would check with university management. The next day, they contacted us and said they saw on the surveillance cameras that there was indeed someone who had followed me when I entered the building. There were no cameras outside, though. Couldn't see the guy's face, so therefore, they had no idea who it is. They just said that security was going to do patrols at night from then on and advised me to have someone walk with me when I went out at that time of night again. We never heard about this guy again, and I suppose that's good news. At the time this happened, I was 13 and female, so this happened 2 years ago, and I was fairly naive. I was a major introvert, only friends with a few people in my class. I wanted to be social, but I preferred to be alone and read or write, just the classic nerd things. In early November, I got a text on my phone that was from a few classmates whose numbers I had. Around 1 or 2 I couldn't recognize as well. It was a group chat, asking if we wanted to hang out at night near a park at our school. My parents, being strict and paranoid, would never let me go. Luckily, or what I had thought was luck at the time, they were heading out for an overnight trip. They would be back around 4 in the morning, so everything just kind of fell into place. Once my parents left around 8-ish, I ran out the door and made my way to the park. The one thing I made sure to do was lock the door. My parents were quite paranoid after all, and it was their biggest thing that they had engraved into me. Once I arrived at the park though, I noticed a creepy figure standing near the edge of the woods. No one else there seemed to notice it, and I had already had enough reputation as a weirdo who was true crime obsessed, so I didn't mention it to them. As the night drew on and on, I was having the time of my life, ignoring this gut feeling I had telling me to run. Every so often, I would look over my shoulder and see that the man was still standing there. Around 9:45, 4 out of the 10 people there had to leave due to their curfew. It was getting very cold as well and was nearly pitch black, with only a few street lights every so often. The rest of us decided to go as well, since it started feeling more and more eerie and quiet. The place we had been hanging out at was a field that was fenced in, with a few exits and entrances. A large, wide field with a small park in the back and our giant middle school behind us. The front of the field faced the empty road, and the right and left sides were surrounded by forest. All the people left were getting picked up by cars, meaning that they went the opposite way of the road, since that's where the parking lot was. The man stood by the right forest/road exit that I needed to take to get home. As I walked away from my group, I tried to steady my heavy breathing. I didn't want to be paranoid, but with all the true crime I listened to, it was catching up to me. The man was probably early 40s or late 30s, dark hair with a big beard. He was around 5'9", but at the time he might as well have been 6 feet tall. He stood about 10 feet from the exit I had to take, so when I got close enough to it, I ran for about 30 feet through the exit and through the woods. Once I felt safe enough, I started to just quickly walk through them, at least to get to the road. Suddenly though, I heard a snap and a crunch from behind me. I stopped walking for a moment and quickly checked over my shoulder. Just around 15 feet behind me stood the very same man, walking slowly toward me, almost as if he were trying not to be suspicious, but this only made my fear worse. I turned around and walked so quickly, I might as well have been jogging. I lived about 10 minutes away from the park we had hung out at, and I was not athletic enough to run all the way home. After about 7 minutes of walking fast, I was in my neighborhood. I knew that now I could run to my house if I had to, so I checked to see if he was still trailing behind me. To my horror, he was only 5 feet away. I ran faster than I've ever run in my life. I could hear his footsteps behind me thumping across the concrete as he began to run too. I dove down an alleyway I knew well and tried to lose him in the park, making my way home even longer. I could hear his heavy labored breath, followed by his heavy footsteps as he tried desperately to keep up. I cut through houses, backyards, and front yards. I finally made it to my house and flew up the steps. I looked behind me just to see that he had arrived at the bottom of my house stairs. I unlocked the door and burst through it, shoving it closed behind me. Just then I heard him hit the door with his whole body force. I ran around the house and locked all the windows, turned off the lights, and hid in my bathroom with a kitchen knife, just in case he got in. He didn't manage it, luckily. If this was a better world, that's where my story would end. But it doesn't. After a few months, I hadn't really told anyone what had happened, since I didn't want to get in trouble with my parents for sneaking out at night. I didn't really go out with anyone or any group anymore, and my loner status quickly returned. I began to write horror stories as a coping mechanism and never went out past 7 p.m. It was around February when a classmate of mine shared a story of some random man following her home from the bus. She described him as the exact same man who had chased me home that night. Another girl then mentioned that he sounded exactly like a guy who had stood outside the school and tried to follow her home one day. I didn't join in with my story, but everyone agreed that he must have just been a weird guy. He was kinda forgotten, and eventually I moved on too. Around May, I was getting ready to walk to school when my mom pulled me aside and showed me a picture of a man. The man who had stalked me, actually. She told me he had been arrested 2 weeks ago for sexually assaulting a child and had just escaped last night. She told me to keep an eye out for him and to call the cops if I saw him. I was shaking the whole time I walked to school. It haunts me to know that if he caught me, I would most likely be in her position, or maybe even dead. This might not be the scariest story, but it definitely creeped me the fuck out. For background, I'm a 20-year-old female. I matched with this guy on Tinder a while back. His name was Nick, and he seemed pretty cool, so I gave him my Snapchat. We talked a little bit, but it died out very quickly. I didn't tell him the exact town I lived in, but the city about 10 minutes away, because it's decent sized and has a big population of people. I figured he wouldn't be able to find me just by knowing that tiny bit of information. A few weeks ago, he started messaging me again and we made a bit of small talk. Everything seemed normal for a while, up until New Year's Eve at least. The day before, he messaged me, saying he was going to be in the area and asked if I wanted to meet for lunch. I told him possibly and that I would let him know in the future. The next night, I had a New Year's Eve party with a small group of friends. I spent most of the day getting ready and was not looking at my phone. Around 7:30, I finally looked at Snapchat and saw Nick had not only messaged me, but also had called me. "Hey, I'm an insert name of my city." I responded telling him I was sorry and I'd just seen his message. He opened it within minutes and totally freaked out. He said something along the lines of, "Just to let you know, I'm not really interested in someone who can't even answer the phone when I drive 6 hours just to see her." I looked at that message in disbelief, and for a second I thought he must be joking. I responded by asking him what the hell he was talking about. He didn't drive 6 hours just to see me. That's when he said we had made plans. Why else would he have ever driven up here? I was confused because we had never confirmed. He told me he was going to be in the area anyway, which made me think he was here for work or to visit a friend. It's not an uncommon thing. I explained this to him and told him we did not have plans, and I didn't ask him to drive all that way for me. He told me he'd sat around for 2 hours waiting for me and even bought me flowers. Again, I was very confused. We'd never planned a time or place to meet, and I never confirmed plans either. You don't make plans by just telling someone you're going to be in the area. I apologized, but told him we never had plans. He told me to make it up to him I had to drive up and see him tomorrow. Yeah, fuck that. At that point, I remembered that I had my location shared on Snapchat, so he could have easily shown up at my house. I turned off my location, but kept him on Snapchat in case he tried to do so. Luckily, I've not heard from him since. My dad is a retired police officer and has a gun, so I'm not afraid to use it either. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed the content of this video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you do decide you like my content enough to subscribe, please be sure to hit the bell button right next to the subscribe button and turn notifications to all so you can be notified of every video I post in the future. If you don't feel like doing that though, I post a video nearly every day, so you can just come back every now and then and check up on what you missed. If you guys have any criticisms on what I can do better or any feedback on the stories in the video, please be sure to leave them in the comments below, as I always enjoy reading all the comments and I try to give them hearts and respond when I can. If you guys would like to reach me for any reason, or you would like to send in a story to be read, you can go ahead and take a look in the description below the video. You'll find a link to all of my social media, including my Facebook, Gmail, and Twitter accounts. Go ahead and send me a message on any of those and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the name of the story is if it has one, what type of story it is if it has a theme, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. Last but not least, I also run two other channels, Mr. Blue Skies and Darkest Hour, where I do true crime videos and dark documentaries respectively. If that kind of content sounds interesting to you, why not go ahead and check it out and see if it is for you. Aside from that though, guys, I think that's pretty much it for now, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.